right, so let's jump right into this deep dive where we like to. What we think are the most important developments and kind of, connect the dots, give you the big picture.
Yeah.
And today is no different. We're focusing on Ukraine, using a whole bunch of really insightful articles published just today by the Kyiv Independent.
Mm-hmm.
And, as a lot of you probably know, Bald and Bonkers Network, LLC, we've been committed to supporting those people impacted by the Russian invasion that's going on. And we're dedicating the proceeds from this broadcast to actually go directly to those charitable organizations making a real difference in Ukraine.
Absolutely.
You'll find a donation link in the episode description if you want to contribute as well.
Definitely.
Our mission today is really just to give you a clear and informed understanding of what's happening right now based on what's being reported. So
Yeah, absolutely. And what's happening in Ukraine is incredibly complex and constantly evolving.
Yeah.
And these reports that we're looking at today touch on a lot of interconnected issues that provide a really good snapshot of the challenges that they're facing right now.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at the continued human cost of the attacks, what's happening with the delicate ceasefire negotiations, diplomacy, some interesting commentary from some unexpected places.
yeah, a little bit out of left field.
Yeah, the huge economic impact of the war, and of course the sanctions.
Right.
And then there's this potential Ukraine-U.S. minerals deal that's kind of in the works, and then we're also going to take a look at Ukraine's response to reports about the sinking of the Moskva,
Yeah.
that Russian flagship. Yeah,
It's a lot, but
Yeah.
we're going to break it down for you.
absolutely.
Let's start with probably where it's the most impactful, and that's the human cost.
Yeah.
The Kyiv Independent has a report today that is really sobering. Titled "Russian Attacks Across Ukraine Kill 6, Injure 46 over past day." This, it really brings home the daily reality that so many Ukrainians are facing.
Right.
Just in the last day, at least 6 civilians died, and at least 46 more were injured in attacks all across the country.
It's a stark reminder that, this is still going on. It's not going away.
Yeah.
It's relentless. The violence is relentless.
Right, and it's not just, one specific area. It's all over.
Yeah, that's what's really concerning when you look at it. Kharkiv Oblast, unfortunately, saw the highest casualties,
Yeah.
with 5 people killed and 32 injured in Kharkiv city itself.
Wow.
And then even in the smaller towns like Shevchenkov and Rusketishki, in the same oblast, there were another 3 people injured.
Yeah.
It's tearing through these communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And the suffering. It goes beyond Kharkiv.
Oh, yeah.
Sumy Oblast, they experienced a death in Velika Pisarivka and an injury in Espan.
Oh, wow.
And then down south in Kherson Oblast, 3 people were injured across 23 different settlements,
Gosh, that's incredible.
including Kherson City.
Wow.
And then, even Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, which has been targeted over and over,
Constantly.
had 3 people injured in a drone strike on Dnipro.
Yeah.
And then, closer to Kyiv, we have Kyiv Oblast. Two men were injured in a drone attack in the Brovary district.
Yeah.
And finally, even Zaporizhia Oblast, an elderly woman and man were injured across 10 settlements, all due to these attacks.
Wow. So it's really impacting the whole country. It's not just one particular region. It's widespread.
And it's relentless.
Yeah.
To kind of understand the scale of this, the Ukrainian Air Force, they reported that Russia launched 78 drones overnight.
Gosh.
Not from one location either. They were originated from Kursk, Bryansk, Milorovo, Primorsk-Akhtarsk.
Wow.
This is really showing that coordinated and sustained effort.
To just inflict damage, from the air.
Yeah, the good news is that 42 of those drones were reportedly shot down by Ukraine's air defense over Kharkiv, Kyiv, Zaporizhia, Dnipropetrovsk oblasts.
Thank goodness.
But the report also mentioned that 22 drones just disappeared from radar.
Oh, wow.
And you hear that, you kind of think, what's going on there? What's the strategy? What does that even mean?
Well, and the Air Force actually explained this, and it gives us some insight into the tactics that Russia's using.
Okay.
The drones that are disappearing from radar before reaching their targets are often deployed as decoys.
Oh, wow.
So they're trying to saturate and confuse Ukraine's air defense systems
I see.
by presenting a larger number of threats, even if some of them aren't real.
Yeah.
It overwhelms the defenders and makes it much harder to actually track and intercept the actual attack drones.
It's a resource-intensive tactic, but it shows that they're really looking for any weaknesses in Ukraine's defense, right?
Absolutely. It's a disturbing tactic. It shows just how intense and adaptive these attacks are. They're not letting up.
Right. Yeah. No, and it's, it really, I think, as we move into talking about the diplomatic arena, which is, it's kind of this other battleground in a way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about the complexities of these potential ceasefire negotiations, because there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So we have two articles here. Kremlin denies Putin, Trump, to have phone call in coming days.
Right.
And Trump waiting for Kirill Dmitriev to report to Putin before taking further Ukraine ceasefire steps, Bloomberg reports. And it's really just, the landscape is changing all the time. It's so uncertain.
Absolutely. And it seems like every time you think you know what's happening, there's a new development.
Right.
There were, reports circulating that Putin and former President Trump might have a phone call soon.
Yeah.
But then the Kremlin came out and they denied it.
Oh, wow.
Their spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, said as of today, April 4th, there are no plans for the next few days yet and nothing on the schedule yet.
So basically,
no call planned. But there were reports that suggested that this was going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that just shows you how the information and the misinformation is changing all the time.
Right. There's a lot of noise out there.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to keep up.
Absolutely.
And then this Bloomberg report, this is interesting because it sheds light on the conditions that might be shaping any potential dialogue between these two leaders.
Okay.
Apparently, advisors to former President Trump are urging him to only have this call with Putin after Russia has agreed to a ceasefire in Ukraine.
So that's a significant shift.
Yeah, it sounds like they're being a little more cautious about this whole thing.
Yeah, they want some concrete action from Moscow before they even consider having high-level talks.
Yeah, it seems like they're saying, show us you're serious first.
Right, exactly.
And this Bloomberg report also gets into this interesting bit of diplomatic maneuvering happening behind the scenes.
Okay.
Apparently, the U.S. is waiting for this guy, Kirill Dmitriev,
to report back to Putin after his meeting with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in Washington.
Interesting. And who is this Kirill Dmitriev?
So Kirill Dmitriev, he heads Russia's state-controlled Russian Direct Investment Fund.
Okay.
And he's actually been involved in some unofficial diplomacy, back-channel contacts with Trump associates in the past.
Oh, so he's a bit of a player then.
Yeah. And now that the U.S. is essentially waiting on his report, it really shows how delicate and drawn out these diplomatic efforts are.
Right. It's not a quick process. And Bloomberg is reporting that there's a lot of frustration among U.S. officials with how slow these negotiations are.
Yeah, and it's not like there haven't been any agreements at all, right?
Right. Like last week, there was this reported partial agreement on a Black Sea truce.
Yeah.
And there was some hope that it would lead to broader de-escalation, but it kind of fell apart because they couldn't agree on sanctions relief.
Oh, so that was a sticking point.
Yeah, Russia was basically saying sanctions relief is non-negotiable. And that didn't align with what the U.S. thought was on the table.
Right. So it really shows how difficult this is going to be.
Absolutely. The conflict is so deeply tied to these international sanctions.
Right.
It's all about leverage.
Well, let's switch gears for a second and talk about something a little bit out there, should we say.
Yeah, sure.
Let's talk about these comments made by Errol Musk.
Okay.
Elon Musk's father.
I've heard about this.
Yeah, so the Kyiv Independent ran a piece today called, "It Would Be Foolish Not to Admire Putin." And then it goes on to say, Elon Musk's father, Errol, swoons over Russian president.
Wow, that's quite a headline.
Yeah, so he did an interview with BBC Russia.
Okay.
And he said that he admires Putin as a man and that it would be foolish not to admire him.
Oh, wow. That's pretty strong.
Yeah, it's a pretty significant statement considering how well-known his son is,
right?
Elon Musk.
And the role Starlink's played.
Yeah, absolutely. Starlink's been crucial to keeping communications up in Ukraine throughout this whole thing.
Absolutely.
And he even went on to question who actually started the invasion.
Oh, wow. That's really going against the grain there.
Yeah, disregarding, basically all the international consensus
and evidence
that points to Russia.
Right.
And then to top it off, he even said that his family, including Elon, shares similar views on Putin.
Interesting. Although I haven't heard Elon Musk himself say anything like that recently.
No, not in such direct terms.
Right.
And he also talked about Elon's decision to provide Starlink to Ukraine in those initial days, saying it was initially the right thing to do, but then he kind of added that the war has just dragged on and goes on and on.
It sounds like he's maybe a little tired of it.
Yeah, or maybe he doesn't quite understand what's actually at stake for Ukraine.
Right, maybe not seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah. It's important to remember the Kyiv Independent article did point out that Errol Musk, he's a South African, he's a former businessman and a politician.
Okay.
And it's been widely reported that he actually has a pretty strained relationship with his kids, including Elon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, his son, Kimball Musk, has even said that their father was verbally abusive.
So it sounds like his comments might just be his own personal views.
Yeah, and not necessarily reflecting anything that Elon or the rest of the family believes.
Right. So we should take them with a grain of salt.
Right, exactly. I mean, he's entitled to his own opinion, but it's not necessarily representative of anything other than his own personal opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to something as sensitive as this, it's important to make that distinction.
Absolutely. And remember that Starlink is still playing a vital role in helping Ukraine.
Right.
So regardless of what his father might think,
Elon
Musk is still doing a lot to support Ukraine.
Absolutely. Well, let's shift gears again and talk about the economic impacts of the war, especially with sanctions and tariffs, right?
Yeah, that's a big one.
So we have a couple reports here. Aging tanker loaded with Russian oil transferring cargo at sea after India ban, Reuters reports. And Trump's tariffs may hit U.S. defense production, including F-35 fighter jet, air defense projects, Politico reports. This is, the economic front is really heating up.
Absolutely, and it's affecting everything.
Yeah.
The Reuters report is really interesting. It's about this aging oil tanker called the Andaman Skies, and it was carrying a lot of Russian oil.
Okay.
But it was recently barred from entering an Indian port.
Really?
Yeah, because they were worried about its safety. It's like 20 years old.
Oh, wow.
And what's interesting is that they didn't just turn around.
Right.
They're transferring the oil at sea to 2 other vessels.
Oh, wow. So they're basically doing a ship-to-ship transfer.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty unusual. But it shows how far Russia will go to keep its oil exports flowing.
Right. They're facing all these sanctions.
Yeah, exactly. And India has become a key buyer of Russian oil since the sanctions started.
Yeah.
But even that's becoming more difficult now.
Right. They're not even letting this tanker in.
Yeah, and it's not just this one. Reuters is reporting that several other tankers have had trouble at Indian ports lately. And it seems like it's because of the sanctions.
So the pressure's on, even for those countries that are buying Russian oil.
Absolutely. And Bloomberg is reporting that a lot of sanctioned vessels are just idling right now.
Oh, wow.
They say it's the highest number since 2017.
So these U.S. restrictions on Russian oil are starting to have an impact.
Yeah, they're sanctioning tankers and Russia's biggest shipping company, Sovcomfort, for violating the G7 price cap.
I see.
And the G7 is really cracking down on this price cap.
Right.
Especially since Russia has been using this ghost fleet of older vessels.
Right. So it's a cat and mouse game on the high seas.
Yeah, absolutely. A global one.
Well, let's talk about this Politico report, which is raising some concerns about Trump's new tariffs and how they might impact the U.S. defense industry.
Yeah. This could be a problem.
Yeah. He's proposing a 10% duty on almost all imports.
And that could have huge ripple effects.
Right. A lot of these joint military projects.
Yeah, like the F-35, air defense systems, even nuclear submarines.
Right.
They rely on really complex global supply chains. And these tariffs could really mess things up.
It sounds like it could lead to higher costs, delays.
Absolutely. And maybe even shortages.
And then there's the issue of, how our allies might react.
Right. They might retaliate with their own tariffs.
Yeah.
And I even heard a European official say that they want to rely less on U.S. defense supplies.
So it could backfire.
Big time. Yeah.
Senator Mark Kelly brought up another point, that the Department of Defense is probably going to see prices go up.
Yeah, because these tariffs are applied multiple times during the manufacturing process.
Right. So it's not just a one-time thing.
Exactly. It's a cascade effect.
It's interesting, though, the Ukrainian economy minister, Yulia Sviridenko, she had a different take on it.
Oh, okay.
She said the tariffs will cause difficulties, but they won't be critical for Ukraine's economy.
Interesting.
She pointed out that Ukraine only exported about $874 million worth of goods to the U.S. in 2024,
Okay,
which was mostly cast iron and pipes.
I see.
But Ukraine imported $3.4 billion from the U.S.
So it's not their biggest trading partner.
Right, so the tariffs will hurt, but they're not the biggest problem Ukraine's facing right now.
Right. The war is obviously the main issue.
Yeah, and the economic devastation that's been caused by the war.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about another aspect of the Ukraine-U.S. relationship.
Okay.
And that's this potential minerals deal.
Right. This has been in the news a lot.
Yeah. So the Kyiv Independent has an article today, Ukraine analyzing minerals deal with U.S. for compliance with Constitution, foreign minister says.
Oh.
And according to the article, Ukraine's minister, Andrei Sybiha, he said that Ukraine is currently auditing this deal.
To make sure it follows their constitution.
Exactly. And this is happening after a series of discussions between Washington and Kyiv about expanding the minerals agreement.
I see. So they're really taking their time with this.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty sensitive issue.
Right.
And one of the main concerns is that this deal might conflict with Ukraine's goal of joining the EU.
Oh, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Minister Sybiha explicitly said that the deal cannot contradict European integration.
I see.
And he even referenced the critical raw materials partnership that Ukraine signed with the EU back in 2021.
So they're trying to walk a fine line here.
Yeah, they want to be close with the U.S., but they also want to join the EU.
Right. It's a balancing act.
Exactly. And there have been reports that this new deal could give the U.S. a lot of control over Ukraine's natural resources.
I can see why they'd be hesitant about that.
Yeah. I mean, they don't want to lose their economic sovereignty.
And it could make it harder to join the EU
Right.
if the U.S. has too much control over their resources.
Yeah, and Minister Sybiha mentioned that a very famous law firm is looking at the document.
Oh, so they're bringing in the big guns?
Yeah, and they're working with American legal partners, too.
So it sounds like they're taking this very seriously.
Absolutely. And a Ukrainian delegation is going to travel to the U.S. soon for more negotiations.
Okay.
And apparently there might even be online talks happening as we speak.
So it's moving fast.
Yeah, but they're clearly being cautious.
Right. They want to protect their own interests.
Finally, let's talk about Ukraine's response to those reports about the sinking of the Moskva.
Yeah, that was a huge event.
So the Kyiv Independent has an article out today. Ukraine's Navy responds to reports U.S. was angry at sinking of Russia's Moskva Black Sea flagships.
Interesting.
And according to the article, Ukraine's Navy spokesperson, Dmytro Pletenchuk, he completely refused to confirm those reports that the U.S. was angry, surprised, or even panicked after the sinking.
Oh, wow.
He said that there were a lot of factors involved, not just U.S. intelligence,
Right.
that led to that victory.
So they're emphasizing their own role in the sinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, I mean, the Moskva was sunk by Ukrainian Neptune missiles in April 2022.
Yeah.
And it was a huge blow to the Russian Black Sea Fleet.
It was their flagship.
Exactly. And it was worth an estimated $750 million.
Wow.
And had a crew of about 500 sailors.
Oh, my gosh.
It is the first Russian flagship sunk since the Russo-Japanese War.
Wow. That's over a century ago.
Yeah, and it played a key role in that initial attack on Snake Island.
Right.
Now, there were reports in the New York Times and other places about a call between U.S. and Ukrainian naval officers
Right.
where the U.S. shared the location of the Moskva. And apparently the Ukrainian response was just, thanks a lot, bye.
Oh, so they were keeping their cards close to their chest.
Yeah, very secretive.
And the U.S. was surprised they could actually sink it.
Yeah, and they were surprised they hadn't been told about the operation beforehand.
So the U.S. was a little bit caught off guard.
Yeah, and there were reports that the Biden administration was worried about attacking such a powerful symbol of Russia.
Right. They didn't want to escalate the conflict.
But Pletenchuk, by refusing to confirm the U.S.'s reaction, he's really asserting Ukraine's own military capabilities.
Right. They're saying, we did this.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't need your permission.
Right. And it also reminds everyone of that moment on Snake Island.
Oh, right. The go fuck yourself incident.
Yeah, which has become such a symbol of Ukrainian resistance.
It's iconic.
Yeah, I mean, the sinking of the Moskva was a huge morale boost for Ukraine.
Absolutely.
And it showed the world that they can fight back.
It was a real turning point.
Yeah, I mean, so to wrap things up, it's clear that the situation in Ukraine is still incredibly complex.
Yeah.
There's the human cost, the diplomatic efforts, the economic impacts.
And the international relationships are so complicated.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep track of.
Absolutely.
And on that note, we want to reiterate Bald and Bonkers Network LLC's commitment to supporting the people of Ukraine.
Yes.
The proceeds from this broadcast and our other work will be donated to organizations providing aid on the ground.
That's fantastic.
And we encourage you to donate as well. If you can, there's a link in the episode description.
Every little bit helps.
Yeah, even a small amount can make a difference.
Absolutely.
So, as we end this deep dive, we want to leave you with a question.
Okay.
What do you think is the most critical factor that will shape the future of this conflict?
Yeah, that's a good one.
And what kind of support do you think will be most helpful to the people of Ukraine?
It's a lot to think about, but it's important to consider.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for joining us today.